Okay, we'll get started here. Let me share my screen. Um, right now, my website. Here. My name's Bob Timlin, hosting this class tonight on Zoom. This is going to be an introduction to the JavaScript and HTML and CSS, but it's going to be the first part of what I'm planning for a 12-week class. I call it Turtle Camp. The reason I call it Turtle Camp is because I do a lot of tutoring. And I got a lot of students taking these boot camps, and the boot camps are really fast paced, and I think they're too fast paced, and they're also very expensive. So got a lot of interest in teaching the same subject matter, but at a slower pace. So I decided to call it Turtle Camp. So this is going to be a 12-week class, 90 minutes each. Tonight's class is no charge. But if you want to do the full, what we call full stack course, which is going to be based using JavaScript and what we call the client and the server. That's what full stack means, a client and server. Client is basically a web browser is a client. Your smartphone is a client, and it connects to a backend server. And if you're using something like Amazon and you search for something on Amazon, your browser or your web phone or whatever, or iPhone rather, whatever you're using is sending a request to Amazon server. You search for skis, and Amazon will bring back a list of skis. I mean, I can just show you here. Go to Amazon's webpage, and it can be any website. I'm just using Amazon as an example, right? I go in here. This is the front end client you're looking at. But if I say, what skis? I want skis. I do a search, and it brings back a bunch of skis. When I did this search here, the browser, which is the client, sent a request to Amazon server to get all the information that they had on skis, and it listed out on their webpage. So this is a client-server interaction. For most people, what you're familiar with is just using the browser, and don't know, unless you've got some training, don't know how that's handled on the other side of the cloud from whatever server you're accessing. Same thing goes with social media, like Facebook or LinkedIn. You're using your browser or maybe your iPhone, which is the client, to communicate or chat or look up stuff on those social media sites. The way that works is, again, you're sending a request from your browser to their servers, and that server is responding to the request and sending a response back. So that's client server. That's how it works, and that's referred to full stack. We're going to start with the client side, looking at the fundamentals of the client. There's three basic core technologies of the web client, and these are also used in some variant way on smartphones. It's HTML, or hypertext markup language, CSS, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript. We're going to start off doing this stuff in the web browser. That is, again, the client. I'm using Chrome, but you can use Edge is fine. You can use even Firefox. The reason I'm using Chrome is Chrome's implementation of JavaScript has become the standard. JavaScript, when we get to the server side of things, we're going to be using something called Node. Node is a JavaScript runtime engine that allows you to run JavaScript anywhere, which including setting up a web server. Node uses the Chrome engine, JavaScript engine. So that's become the standard. Node has built-in libraries that allow you to run a web server or an app server, and we'll discuss the difference between the two. And there's some supporting libraries that help as well. A very popular one is one called jQuery. Another one that's now built in to JavaScript latest version, which is 6. We're talking about API calls. An API call is how a client and server communicate with each other. It means application program interface. This is how a client requests something from the server or sends something from the server. When you sign in and you type your name, email address, phone number, and stuff like that to create some sort of account online, that's on the browser or again on your smartphone. When you click the submit button, all that information gets sent to the server using an API call. And the server will send a response back to the client, again, using API calls. Another big important part of the backend server is the database. All the information is stored in a database. For example, when I did this search on Amazon, Amazon has all these products in their database. A database is just a server that stores data, basically what it means. So database integration is necessary for almost every application to have a backend database. Now, traditionally, the type of database that's been used in the past is something called a relational database, and you access it with a language called SQL or structured query language. What's becoming increasingly popular is these NoSQL-based databases. That one's called MongoDB. So for this course, I'm going to show database integration to both MySQL, which has been really historically the norm, and the NoSQL type of databases. The one we'll use is MongoDB. It's a very popular one. Then we'll get into the fundamentals of React. React is for the client, but it's a new way of presenting the client that makes it faster and more responsive. It's also becoming very popular on mobile devices. So for this course, if anyone's interested in signing up after this, this free class tonight, it's going to be 12 weeks, 90 minutes each class. I don't think you should go more than 90 minutes because I think you start to run into burnout after 90 minutes. Plus, the purpose is not to cram a lot of information down you fast, but to do it at a slower pace so you can absorb it. The course for the 12-week class is $399. So I will, if anyone has any questions along the way, feel free to ask. I'm going to reserve some time at the end for Q&A so that we'll have time to ask questions then as well. Okay, so on to the intro. We're going to talk about JavaScript, but we also have to write a basic web page in HTML and CSS in order to demonstrate it. JavaScript, often abbreviated as JS, is a programming language that is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web alongside HTML and CSS. As of 2022, 98% of websites use JavaScript on the client side for the web page behavior, incorporating third-party and also incorporating third-party libraries. One of the more popular one is one called jQuery. It's in a high-level interpreted language. It's based on something called ECMAScript. JavaScript came about in the mid-90s, around the same time Java was becoming popular. Back then, it wasn't called JavaScript. It was called this ECMAScript, which is a little hard to pronounce. At the same time, Microsoft was promoting their own scripting language for the browser called VBScript, based on Visual Basic. The Java language was becoming very popular. So really, and as a marketing, really is more than a marketing move than anything else, they rebranded ECMAScript as JavaScript. Now, the syntax of the JavaScript language is very similar to Java, so it wasn't much of a stretch to do that. But this was more of a branding thing to really compete with Microsoft because, like I said, that's not particularly easy to pronounce ECMAScript. However, the official name of the language is still ECMAScript. It's simply branded as JavaScript. So what was released a few years back is ECMAScript 6, which added a lot of improvements to JavaScript, and in order to make it more viable on the back end, because JavaScript has been, since its inception more than 25 years ago, a scripting language for the browser only. That changed about 10 years ago with the introduction of Node, which allowed JavaScript to run anywhere. and improvements have been added since to give it the functionality necessary for it to really be viable as a server-based language in addition to the client. It runs on client server, client browser, as well as server, desktop, mobile, Node.js as well. Node.js, as I said, is a JavaScript runtime engine to allow JavaScript to run anywhere. I can give you a quick, maybe you'll see a quick demo of Node tonight, but we're not going to get into Node in any serious way for a couple of classes. Okay, it was originally, JavaScript was originally, or ECMAScript was originally created to make the browser interactive and dynamic, that it could respond to user action on the web page. It's now also used on servers and mobile devices. The nice thing about JavaScript is all the mobile devices have to support JavaScript or their web browsers won't work. And that's important because Apple and Google, who are the biggest makers of mobile phones, like the iPhone and the Android, can't agree on anything. So right now, when applications are written for the iPhone or the Android, developers have to write them in two different, what we call code bases, because quite frankly, just Apple and Google cannot agree on a common language. However, both were forced to support JavaScript because browsers require them, and smartphones have browsers on them. So for this reason, JavaScript is looking to become the major player on the mobile devices as well. And in fact, it already is. So it's becoming a popular language. It's been popular language on the browsers for, like I said, 25 years. Okay, we got a couple of questions here. Thanks. Oh, thank you, my website. Will also be with the tutor server. Yes, I'm teaching all of it. So I'm a full stack developer. To give a little background on me, I started 30 years ago. I started my career with Apple Computer in Cupertino. Worked for them for a number of years, and they had a big layoff in 1996. This is before Jobs came back, and this is when everyone was expecting Apple to just go bankrupt. It didn't. Jobs came back, and everyone knows the story. Turned the thing around, and now they're one of the most richest, wealthiest companies on the planet, from being almost bankrupt 25 years ago. But I worked for them, and then I went and I worked for another company for a long time in the healthcare field, and worked initially for them on their Y2K program, with all the old programs that couldn't handle the change of the century mark. In the process of that, we started developing a lot of applications, web-based applications, with a web server on the back end and just a web browser on the front end. Since we were modernizing systems, we went with the most modern technology at the time. And that's where I really started getting into web application development. That's over 20 years ago. Back in those days, like as I said, Java was very popular. So we were using Java servers, but the web front end had to use these three core technologies. Java is not supported on browsers. JavaScript is, but not Java. So on the back end, it was all Java. On the front end, it was this core technology of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I'm a full stack developer because of it. Yes, I will be the tutor for all of it, all this, the client and the back end server as well. Okay, all right. So some of the topics we're going to touch on, we'll get through some of these tonight. I'm not sure how many. We'll get through some of them tonight, some of the core topics. One is a variable. And what is a variable in data types? A variable is a name that references a location in your computer's memory. Can locate in your computer's memory. So in order to do this demonstration, there's a couple of ways you could do this. I could do this with Node, and maybe if we have time, I'll give a few examples with both. But let's say first thing we're going to need, since we're going to use a browser, is we're going to need a web page. I'm using Visual Studio Code, by the way. That's very popular for web development. I would recommend it, whether you're using Windows or Mac or even Linux. Visual Studio Code works well on all of it. It's free. Download Visual Studio Code. It's a very nice editor. And like I said, it's become very popular for web developers. But anyway, we'll start by creating a simple web page. Every web document starts with an HTML tag that opens it. Now, Visual Studio Code is nice. It's got a template, so I can just do that. And this gives me basically a starter web page. So you have the doc type just says HTML, and this because there's a exclamation mark after the less than sign, that means it's metadata. Then every document starts with an HTML tag, and it's got open. Every tag has got to have an open and close. So here we have the open HTML tag, and here we have the close. The page itself is made up of two main sections. One is the head section, which doesn't really have visible content in it so much as it's got some information about it. You can reference other files. You can also give some metadata. The character set UTF-8 standard set. Now this is saying IE equals edge. So what this is simply doing is that if you if the browser says IE, it actually means edge. And this is a compatibility statement. It's not that important. It was using Chrome. It's not necessary at all. Here's the page title. So now I just created this. I'm going to save this. And I'm going to go to right here, I think. Yeah. And this is the one I saved. Yes, it is. Okay, good. Okay. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to double click it. Brings it up, nothing. But if you notice up there, if you can see it where it says page title, right? Okay. So the first thing we do here, so you're changing this, so change the page title to intro to, call it web. I'll keep it kind of short because it's a title section, web dev, like that, right? Come back here, refresh it. Where did we lose it? No, we lost it. Why did that happen? We shouldn't have lost that. Interesting. Give me that title. Oh, I see what I do wrong here. Okay, let's reopen it. Now up there it says intro to web dev. So there's your main section. Now that's the header section. You'll see some files in here. This one thing says it's got a style sheet. CSS is for cascading style sheets. Style sheets are what basically is sort of the makeup of a web page to make things look nice and pretty. We'll get back to that in a second. Main.js, JS stands for JavaScript, and this is where you would put JavaScript files. Now, by default, it puts it in the header section, and that's okay, but sometimes it's better to put it in the body section. And the reason being is that all of these commands are read sequentially. And so if you put it up in the header section and you have something in the JavaScript that you wanted to happen immediately, it wouldn't happen because the entire page is not yet loaded. But if you put it at the bottom, then it will happen. It'll happen after all the body is created. So one of the first things we're going to do here is going to use a tag in the body. And this is still just HTML, not JavaScript or CSS. H1. H1's a header. And welcome to web development. Okay, I'm just going to type that in there. Okay, now go back over to our browser, and if I do a refresh, I get that. That was what I typed in there. That's a basic tag. H1 is a header section. It means it's a big header. And you can go and do something a little smaller. And you can see that's the font's a little bit smaller. Okay, so over to the variables. So I was doing a little bit of HTML there to give you some background on HTML. Now the JavaScript, well, I've got a JavaScript file here. It's got nothing in it yet. So what's a variable? There are three types of variables in JavaScript. One is called var, right? Var, let, and const. Var is the the original way of declaring a variable, it is now been what we call deprecated, which means they don't want you using it anymore because they've got a better way of doing it. var creates global memory no matter where you use it, and global memory just means it's memory that's available throughout the entire page versus local memory, which is only available in part of the page. This is what's known as scope in programming languages, and it's important because you don't want to have global memory all over the place if you don't need it. That's not good management of memory, but we'll more on that later. Let's start with the first one. So it's a variable. I can say var name equals Bob. Okay, so var means it's a variable. I'm creating a variable in memory. Name is literally the name of the variable. Equal means an assignment, and BOB is the value that's being stored in that array. So this right here gets put into the computer's memory. Name gives you a way of referencing it. So for example, here, I can say one of the outputs you have on Java is console.log, which means it'll log out to the console anything you want, any information you want. So here I can just say console log Bob name. So here I've just did a console log and I'm out. It's going to put it out to the console. Now that doesn't do anything. But if I right click and I go to inspect and then click on console, it says right there, name Bob right there. I can change this to say something like hello. And now it says hello Bob. So that's there. Now it's a variable. I can take this. Now I can't do this a second time because this variable's already been used. Once you declare a variable, you cannot declare it a second time, but you can reuse it. I can change the name, Mary, right? Now it says hello Bob, hello Mary. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I can use Node. And we're not going to get too much into Node here, but I'm going to show you how you can use Node to do this. So there's my file, main.js. I can type node main, and I don't have to say .js, I can just say main. Well, what happened was Node is a JavaScript runtime engine that allows you to run JavaScript commands outside of the browser. You no longer have to have it in the browser. This is going to come in handy later on. But you see what it did here? I typed node and the name of the file. It executed the two commands in that file. There's other types of memory as well. One is let. Let is the preferred way to use memory now. This is going to do exactly the same thing. I'll just go here. It'll be easier to do that. The third type way of declaring variables is called a const. A const means read-only. What it means, read-only, means you can only assign a value to it once. Let's go over here. You can only assign a value to it once. So this second assignment here will not work. I should get an error when I do it. If I go here, I get an error. Okay. Assignment to a constant variable. So that means you can only give it a value once. And this is useful if you have some value that's static, that doesn't change, and you want to avoid accidentally changing it. If I go to my browser and do a refresh, we're going to get the same error message in the browser, right? The same error message right there. So, like, for example, let's say maybe you have something that is a sales tax rate that doesn't change very frequently. You might want to make it a constant so it doesn't accidentally get changed. That's the reason you do it. The constant's going to be more efficient in memory too, because the operating system knows that this is memory that's not going to get changed. So it can put it in a less volatile space in memory. So this just has to do a little bit with how computers manage memory. It's not really important to know. but it's preferred that you use a const whenever possible. But sometimes values change, so you can't. So then you'd have to use one of these others. So let and var, which basically are very similar to each other, read write. You can assign a value, you can change the value as often as you want. So now going back to let, our program will work just fine. Okay. Arrays. An array is a list of values. So you can have multiple values in an array. And I'll show you how this would work. We'll go down here. Let's go down here. And I can say something like const friends is equal to, and there's a couple of ways of doing it. The common way that most people do it is this way right here. Arrays are values that are in a list. They're declared with a bracket and they're separated by a comma. So friends. But one thing I didn't show you here. Yeah, actually, let me do this here. I didn't show you. So this right here, name, because it's in double quotes, this is what's known as a string data type. String means any character. Another common data type would be numeric values. So let's say let age equal 18. And say console.log age. Now you'll notice the 18 is not in quotes. It's not between double quotes, right? That means that this is a numeric number data type. This is a string data type. There are other data types as well. These are two of the more common ones, but so that's important to know the data types, and we'll get more into that. Down here, it just says H18, okay? Let's see. Okay, we're talking arrays. Arrays are important as well. So what's an array? Array is like a list of values. So the way you can create an array is, again, a variable, const, let, or var, any one of them. Let's say friends. That's the name of the array. An array is just a variable that has multiple values, not just one single value, but multiple values as a list. Again, the assignment operator. Because it's got multiple values, the values are in between brackets, square brackets. So let's just say here, name, Bob, Amy, Jim, or something like that, okay? So now this array lists 3 names. So how do you reference it? Well, you can just list the entire array. You can do something like console.log friends, and this will list out all the values in that array. Okay, again, if I go here, now it's showing you it's an array. It says 0, 1, 2. The values in the array can be accessed through their index, right? So, and arrays in pretty much every language that I know of start with 0, then 1, 2. So Bob is friends index 0, Amy is index 1, Jim index 2, and I'll show you this in a moment, exactly how that works in a moment. Back here, okay, got the same thing. So back to here. So how would I reference this? I could say friends sub 0. That should give me Bob. There it is, Bob. If I go back here and I say 1, that should give me Amy. And it does. Go back to here. Again, put in the last one, 2. And that should give me Jim. So that's the way an array works. An array is a variable that has multiple values. And it's basically like a list. It works like a list of values, right? Okay, let's see. What are we at next? Methods for strings, arrays, and objects. Okay, so some things you have on strings is you can say some of the string methods you have. Could be hello. What's the length? How many characters are in here? Length. Okay. Let's get to length. How that just means how many characters are in there. Ooh, didn't like something else. Non-function. Let's see where we're at here. Oh, I think it's just length. I don't think you have to give the. I think you give 3. So it's 3. Okay, so how about Mary? Mary should be 4, right? Mary should be 4. So let's just do this name dot length. Okay, hello Mary. And this will tell us the length. 4. There are a lot of methods. I'm not going to get into all of them tonight, but there are a lot of what they call methods of arrays that you can use. Now, the arrays, all objects have methods of some sort. Object literals. What do we do on object literals here? Let me check and see. You can add, oh, these are objects. Okay. You can add, one of the things you can do here, for example, is in the arrays. One of the methods of the arrays here is you can add to it. So for example, I can say friends, and I print this whole thing out. And you can also do this in that there, is you can add to the array. So I can do this, and then I can say friends dot push chain. And what do I do here and here? What happened? Oh, there it is. Oh, we did it twice. Oh, we did it twice. So now you got chain. We got added that. You can add items to the array. Some of the things you can also do that work very well with arrays. When you got an array, you don't know how many items are in the array. Now, one of the things you can do with the array is you can say here, I can say console log friends. I can do dot length here as well. So when I do this here, 3 gave me 3. What is this? Not right. Where did I do it? Oh, I did it. That's okay. I did that. So here, do it again. How many friends? Do that. Okay. So the first time it should say 3. Then after I push, it should say 4. Okay. How many friends? 3. How many friends? 4. All right. Node would give us the same response. Now with arrays, they can you don't know how many they have. And if you want to do a list or something of your friends or search your friends for something, you would have to use something called a loop to do it. Okay, so let's try right here. We'll look at it. We'll try the original for loop. So what is the original for loop like? There's actually a couple of different variants on it, but the original one looks something like this. Let I equal to 0, I less than friends dot length I plus plus. Let me explain this here. This is a for loop. It means it's going to do something X number of times. What this for loop is going to do, it's going to do it 4 times because there's now 4 friends in here. That value is 4. And what this is saying, start at 0 and keep going through this for loop, which means repeating what's inside between the curly brackets until you get to the length, whatever this length is. In this case, it's 4. I plus plus is shorthand, the shorthand way of saying I equals I plus 1. So what this is do, it increments the I variable by 1 each time through the loop. And we can show you how this is. I'll do this console log. And I'm going to print out the I, and I'm also going to print out friends sub I. Okay. And it might be easy to show you a node here. We do this here. Okay, so there you go. 0 Bob. So that's the first one time through the loop. Get 0 Bob, then 1 Amy, then 2 Jim, then 3 Jane. So there's a for loop that goes through the loop, the array. For loops are very commonly used with arrays because you've got a list of values and you need to go through the list of values to do something. Okay, so now what else do we want to do? I'll show you the different versions of the for loop. This is a variant on the for loop. It's called, this would just say let I in the array, like that. Now this version was created because for loops are so commonly used to iterate through arrays. They just came up with a shorter way of doing it. Instead of having to write out all of this, you just set not length, just let I in array. And that's going to give you that array index. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show, this is what they call a multi-line comment when I do a /*, multi-line comment. Comments are generally used for documenting your program, but programmers will also use them to disable a section of code temporarily. And that's what I'm doing, so you can see how the second for loop works. It works exactly the same. So it works exactly the same. If we go in the browser here, we will see it works exactly the same. Right. The for each is a method of this loop as well. This is new as of JavaScript 6, so this didn't exist a couple of years back. This is actually a method, what we call a method of the loop. And here you give a value that you want, maybe it's just friend. And you can also pass in the index. What do we have to do here? Actually, we have to do something. This is a little more complicated. It's not really more complicated. The syntax is a little different. But this is actually a method of the array instead. Now here, I can do the same thing again, except, what are we doing? We don't have this part anymore. I'll just cover that there. And look at this here. Okay, we still got the same thing. That's interesting. Gave us the quotes. I wonder why it did that in the array here. This is less commonly used primarily because it's newer. So you don't see it as frequently used. What if I do from node here? Where we go? I don't get that there. Conditionaries. Okay, so if statement, what they call a ternary. There's a map and do while. These are variants on the loop, and we will get to them. I don't think we need to get to them tonight, but these are different ways of doing loops as well. Map is another method of the for each loop. It works very similarly to the for each loop. So conditions, if ternary. Okay, so here we have this guy right here. An if statement. If an if statement asks a question, and you've got two possibilities. The question is either true or false, so it's either yes or no. So here I can say if age is under 21, console.log. No, to trick. Okay, we can do something like that. Right. Go to the browser and try this. There it is, not old enough to drink. Now, The if statements, this is the yes part, right? If less than true, this means true or yes. Well, what's the alternative? This is the false part. It's called an else part of the if statement. This is the false or no part. So this is what happens if the answer to the question on 11 is false. Okay, so that means they're old enough to drink. Okay, so that here. So now if I change this to 21, and we go back to here, right there, it says not old enough to drink. Can I buy you a drink? Because this condition evaluated to true, or actually evaluated to false. So under 21, sorry, not old enough. Over 21, yes, you are. That's an if condition. Now, what are some other conditions they have here? They also have a ternary operator. Ternary operator is sort of an inline if statement, and I think we'll go on to what we call the switch statement. Switch statement is kind of like an if statement. It evaluates a value, and then you have a couple of possibilities. Case, let's say, say you can evaluate a couple of different possibilities. Oops. And I don't know. Then you have another, you also have a default here. So you have a couple of different possibilities. Default here is going to be, let's say, console log, you are age years old. All right, so age is 21. You probably don't need this one anymore. Now you're going to see something unusual with the switch statement. I'm going to do it. Let's maybe comment out some. Let's put this at the very bottom here so we see it. Okay. Okay. Got some of these things here. Let's get rid of some of these things here. Comment them out so it doesn't get in the way. Okay. So we'll do it the browser, see in the browser as well. Now, one of the things you see is I got all three messages. Why is that? The reason being is that the switch statement works a little different than an if statement. It says that as soon as one of the cases is true, the assumption is that the rest of them are true as well. That's not really correct. So what we would do with the switch statement, you have to add something called a break that says, no, we're done here. So it exits this thing. You don't need it with the default. So now if I go here, notice we got all three of those. Right? Look in the browser, same thing. We got all three. Now that I put the break in, I've only got one. Change the age. I can change the age right here. Age equals 18. Goes from can I buy you a drink? Register to vote. All right. see. The ternary operator is a little different here. It's kind of a special operator. Generally, this is something that people that are a little more advanced use, although it's not difficult to use. What could you do here with the ternary operator? Here could be a ternary operator. You could say here, console.log age greater than or equal to 18 question mark adult. Press over here, minor, right? Minor. So what does this mean? This is kind of like, could be like an in statement. It does it in one line. You're asking a question. You're asking a question here again. Age greater than or 18, question mark. You're asking a question. If the answer is true, yes, it's going to print adult. Otherwise, it's going to print minor. So if we go and let's put this down here, grab this thing here, put it down here. Adult, right? So down there it says adult. We go to our browser, it'll say the same thing. Adult. Okay. Now if I just come in here and I just change this to 17, and we go back to our browser, now it says minor. So that's the ternary operator. It allows you to do sort of a one-line simple if statement. And it's kind of a neat trick that typically it's generally used by more advanced programmers. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I don't see any hands going up. Okay.
So the ternary is mostly used in React?
No, it's not. It can be used anywhere. Ternary can be used anywhere. It pre-exists. Actually, the ternary operator goes all the way back to the C language.
Oh.
The C language, which is the first language I started programming in 30 years ago. The syntax of JavaScript and a lot of languages, modern languages today, are drawn from the C language. So the C language is like the sort of the granddaddy of all languages. I learned C more than 30 years ago in college, and that was what I used on my first job. After that, I learned C++, which was object-oriented version of C. Again, based on the syntax of the C language, and now then Java and JavaScript and a lot of other languages that are also object-oriented really come from the C++ world. But since the syntax of the C++ is also C, that basically makes C sort of the granddaddy of all languages. And you would probably say that C++ is the daddy of all object or almost all modern object-oriented languages. That includes Java, JavaScript, C# and a bunch of others. So let's see. And is there a situation when you shouldn't use the ternary? It's kind of limited in its ability of what it can do. Yeah, if you have anything complex, you wouldn't use it. We haven't gotten into complex conditions yet. It'd be difficult to do a complex condition in a ternary, but I wouldn't say impossible. One of the problems with the ternary is it's not very readable. One of the best practices in programming is that you should have very readable code that's easy to understand, because you may be writing it, but someone else may be maintaining it. Or it could also be something that you wrote and never looked at for years, and then you're tasked with going back and making a change. And even though you wrote it, you're like, what the heck was, you look at it and you're like, what the heck was I doing? So there's best practices of making sure that code is easy to understand. One of the practices for that is to write a lot of comments. Part of it is also naming conventions. So for example, here's a naming convention. Here I said age. Okay, that's obvious. Age, someone's age. I could have just said, instead of age, I could have said, oh, let A equal 16 or 17. But and then down here, you're like, in an if statement, maybe this is defined, let's say, all the way up here, right? Like top of the program, and then all the way here down at the bottom of the program, you've got something that says, if A equals 17 or 18, and you're here, this could be like hundreds of lines into the program. You're like, what the heck does A mean? You're like, what does that mean? What is A? What is A? It doesn't make sense. I don't know what it is. However, best practice is to use meaningful variable names. So now I use that's not meaningful at all. You're like, what the heck? What the heck does A mean? That's a meaningful variable name. Age. Oh, age. Okay, right. Got it. Now this says line 60 because this could be line 6,000 in a program. A lot of programs are very big. So, yeah, so the thing about the ternary operator, a lot of people don't like them, so they don't consider to be very readable code. So they kind of shy away with it. But I think it's got its place. And it does have its roots in C language, and it's not something just for React. It's used in JavaScript, Java, C++, all these other languages. Now, what I did skip over, and I shouldn't have skipped over, something called objects. So what's an object? An object is like it's got properties. It's also a complex variable like an array that's got properties. So what would an object be? So an object might be like something like person. And this starts with curly brackets, and it's got multiple properties. And a property is just a variable, but inside of an object, it's called a property, but it's basically a variable. So let's say person, let's say last name, Smith, comma, first name, John, right? And then they might have something like here, email, say John Smith at gmail.com, something like that. This is an object. An object is a variable as well. It's got multiple pieces of information as well, but it's not an array because all of that information belongs to a single object, so a single person. An object is a person, place, or thing. So in this case, it's a person. It's an object. A person has several properties, right? Properties are like, or attributes about them. Their name, okay, their date of birth, put date of birth in here, their email, their phone number, address, things like that. There's certain we call properties or attributes about a person. So now it's here. So now what does this look like? Person. Right here. And if I just go to here, here it is. When it prints it out, it prints it like that. Right? And if you go to our browser, we will see exactly the same thing. It's got all the different, what they call attributes. Like that. Now, what you can do, you can have arrays of objects. And this is something that's going to be very common. Arrays of objects, because this is really how information is sent back. This data that Amazon got back about all the skis, this likely came back from Amazon's server to the browser in what's known as an array of objects. So I'll show you what an array of objects is. We know an array is something with brackets. Let's say people. This is an empty array. Okay, it's an array. This is an array. What's an array of objects? Instead of putting one simple value in there, name Jane, we could do this friend. Let's do friends again. Let's do our friends again. Okay, say here, friends, right here, friends. Well, you may want to keep more information about your friend than their name. So now what I can do is I can say friends dot push. The objects between curly brackets, last name, Smith, first name, John, email, john.smith@gmail.com. Okay. So I just put in this array, I put that in there. Now, if I take this friends thing here and I print it out, you get that. See, there's the int against 0, and there's the entire array. Well, that's just one friend. Well, what can we do? We can add another friend. What we can do, we can have as many friends as we want. Just take this, copy it, push this again. Let's do something different. I don't know. Jerry Garcia, we get free ice cream. Okay, like that. For a browser, now we look at it. Now we've got 2 right there. Now, what can we do? Yeah, you can have as many friends as you want. You can also use your loop again. For let, and this is going to be very common. You get data back from the server in an array of objects. You're going to use a loop to render that information onto the browser. Here, I'm just going to say console.log, the entire one, friends, sub I. Go through here. We see each one is printed out. It doesn't look very different. That's just a little different. Hello, friend. Friend sub I. Now, what if I want to look at just the name? I can say dot first name. So friend at that index 1, let's put the index here as well. And we can look at it either place. We can do this here. Oh, I did this console log. Let's get rid of this here. And it says it down here. Hello, friend John. Hello, friend Jerry. That's very common. Okay. I'll show you when we get back to the browser, show you how that would be used internally. Okay, so this thing says a function. So we're going to do a function here. And then I'm going to go down to DOM to give you an example of how that works. And this one here, I'm just going to say function. A function is a piece of code that can be called randomly or whenever you want to call it. So in this particular example here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap this entire thing around a function. Examples. Function is a name of a function, which is a block of code that you can execute on demand. The name of the function is examples. Come down here. Actually, let's do it up here. Now, actually, let's do it here. I'd see that what's going to happen is nothing's going to happen. We've got a question here. Curly and curved bracket used together. Curly and curved bracket, you mean like the parentheses? Oh, okay. I'll show you what this. So you're talking about like on 71 with the push. Push is a method. The parentheses indicate values that are going to be passed to a method or function. Now, and you can pass as many values as you want. The curly brackets represent an object, the beginning and end of an object. So when I did if you look up here, we also did a push of this friends Jane, we also had the open parentheses but the only thing we passed into there was name. This is a simple variable. It's not an object. So the curly brackets were not required. So it is a combination. Now I could have done this a little bit simpler. I could have said here, get rid of this here. I could have said const friend 1 is equal to that. Oops. What are we doing here? Oh, shoot. I think I lost it all. Okay. Grab that. Const friend 1 is equal to that. And I could have took this guy and put it in like that. So to break it down to 2 parts, I'm creating the object, the friend object, with the values of John Smith and their email address. And now I'm pushing it, or I'm adding it onto the array or onto the list. So it's in 2 parts. They don't have to be used together. What I was doing is what a lot of programmers with experience do. We know that we can combine the commands on a single line, but they can also be done on separate lines. And really, what I really should have done, since this is a beginner's class, I shouldn't have combined the commands. I should have kept it simpler. Friend 2 is equal to this here. Okay, this one 2. And now I can just put this in here. And we're done. All right. And then if we come up here, all right, if we do this, oh, so now you see nothing happened. Nothing happened because I put this inside of a function. If we go to the browser, you'll see nothing happened. What I can do, though, I can call it. I can say, all right, I want this stuff to happen, so I have to call the examples function. And now if I go here, all that stuff happened. Here, all this stuff happened. Okay. Now, what I want to do is a little bit of a is our index. I'm going to put something in here. It's called a div. I'm going to give it an ID. Div friends. This is getting a little bit into the document object model, or how you can reference the document object model and how JavaScript can dynamically update it. Right now, if we go in here, nothing will happen. So in my examples, now I'm going to create another function here. And instead of calling examples, I'm going to call it function page load. It's called page load. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to use a for loop. I know I've got my friends, though the friends actually have to be created here. Let's put this here. We need to have all our friends here. And the page load. So what's the page load going to do? The page load is going to dynamically populate the page with my friends. And so we have to create a, we're going to dynamically create some content using a string. And I'm going to go through this. I'm going to loop through this thing. Let I in friends. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very simple one called a line order or an ordered list. This is going to be the easiest way to do it. And we'll say content is equal to content plus. When you use a plus sign on a string, it does concatenation. So we're concatenating the string together. Line order here plus friends sub I dot, we'll just say last name plus line item. And then here, when I'm done, I have to close it. plus equal. This ends the order list. That's done. Now what I have to do is I have to update the document itself so that we see these names on our web page. Document dot get element by ID div friends dot inner HTML is equal to content. Okay, so this thing says document. This is how you get access to the document, and you get access to individual sections of the document by an ID. If I go back to the HTML page, we'll see that this div right here has an ID of friends. So now if I go and do this here, it didn't work. Or didn't it work? It didn't work. An invalid expected token line. So this will tell you what's wrong with line 88. There's an error. Tell me there's an error at line 88. So I have to go into this thing here. Line 80. Oh, that's what happened. How did that happen? Okay, so let's go back to our browser. And there are friends. The web page got updated with the friends. So put another friend in here if we want, and it'll update it. So try another one. This should be friend 3. And I could have done this like the way I showed you the shortcut way. I probably shouldn't be teaching shortcuts just yet.
No, you can teach the shortcut way, or I just need
Eventually,
clarification.
eventually, yes. But it's probably not a good idea to do it straight away. Okay, so now we'll save this here. And now you see you got 2 names, refresh. What happened to our extra name? Did I not save it? Did I forget to save it? Oh, I didn't add it. Gotta add it. So I gotta add it to the list. In reality, this data here would not be hard-coded in the browser. It would be coming from a server. But that's later on when we start learning a little more about servers. So now we go here, we refresh this. There it is. There's the extra name. Now you can print out all the information here. You're not limited. Right now, what we're doing is we're using a line item. So they're kind of limited what you can do, but you can do stuff like just do some concatenations here, plus friends, sub I dot first name, concatenate them. So you can do that. So now if we come back to the browser, you get that. You want to add their email, you can add their email. Now, the way you would probably do this in HTML is you wouldn't use a list, you would use something called a table. A table would be a better way of doing it. We probably got just about enough time to do that, and then we'll have to. So I'll just do a table here. Last name. First name. Email. Okay, so now we're not going to get rid of this here. And here, TR, it's going to be tbody. We have to give this an ID. ID equals tbody ID. Maybe with that. So now, doesn't seem to like this. Say border equals 1. Give it a little border. I don't like this. Okay. So here, now we're gonna have to do something a little differently. So here, what we would do is we'd say, so you have to create a new row, TR, TD, and here you would just end TD. Okay, go next line. Content's a little bit more of the, there's an easier way of doing this. It's called the string replacement, but it's content plus. Now here, oops, come on. This would be a TD plus. You have to end this thing here. And then one more for the email address, content content plus do all this again, but it'll be an email. This will be email. And this, and you also have to end the row. And you don't need this anymore. And this is now going to be T-body ID. Right? T-body ID. Come here, refresh. Okay. Oh, it's okay. We got an extra row in there somewhere, but that's a table layout. For some reason, it gave us an extra row. I'm not sure how I did that. Here, TRTD. Somehow we got an extra row in there. But then, oh, this is why. We no longer need that. So now you've got a list that's dynamically generated by JavaScript updating the web page. And that's what JavaScript does. It dynamically updates everything. The data would typically be coming from a server. It would not be, you would not have this data hard-coded in your program. You would get it from a server. But you have a program here that would get it from the server and then update the information. So these could be customers, for example, or something, that friends or customers, whatever. It's a list of people. So do we have any questions here? No questions. Any questions from anyone? I wanted to leave time at the end for question and answer. And that's probably about as far I want to go tonight. A couple of links in here. One is a link to download Visual Studio Code. That's the tool I'm using here. It's what most professional developers these days use for developing web applications, Visual Studio Code. I wanted to leave some, let's see. I got a question. Who can see your messages? Oh, I am recording it, and I'm recording it, and I plan on uploading it to my YouTube channel. So, and I'll send out the link so that you can review it. One of the things is that you're not going to absorb this. You're not going to be absorbed in one class. So yes, when I stop, hopefully this will save. I will update it to my YouTube channel for people to go back and watch it again.
Will all your classes be recorded?
Yes, they will.
For the paid students or be for everyone to see?
They're going to be paged and uploaded to my YouTube channel. I'm not going to send it to you if you're not paid, although I mean, you can probably easily find my YouTube channel. Yeah, they'll be uploaded.
What times is your classes will be?
Every third. Well, I'm on the West Coast, Pacific time. I don't know where everyone's from, but California time, 6 p.m. Thursdays. Every Thursday, 6 p.m. for roughly 90 minutes.
And that's for 1 month?
Well, it's 12 sessions. No, it's probably 3 months because 12 sessions. It's not going to go. I know those boot camps probably try to shove all this in 1 month, but that's too fast. I mean, I've taught at the college level. This is a full semester course. A full semester is usually 12 weeks. I know the boot camps try to jam it in, but a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of complaints from people that are taking these boot camps. It's too fast, and I agree, it is too fast.
Yeah, I
see how I get students coming. I've had students in these boot camps practically cry because it was like so fast they couldn't keep up. And I looked at how much they were trying to get them to digest in a short period of time. I'm like, yeah, I'd be crying too. I could do it, but I've got 30 years experience. I don't see how a beginner could really absorb that stuff that fast. So this is going to be a 12-week class. So that's basically 3 months.
Okay.
You can't rush this stuff. It's probably not gonna. You're probably gonna just get frustrated and quit. You can't rush. This is a full semester. I've taught this stuff at the college level, and this is a full semester course. This is not a 30-day class or a 1 month class. This is at least a 3 month class.
Okay, and so the days that you miss, at least you can go back and look at the recording.
Yeah, it'll be yes, it'll be uploaded to the YouTube.
Okay. And you will just do JavaScript, or will you get into parts of React?
So let's go back to here. We will get to React. Yes. Where are we at? Oh, no. There's the. Yeah. Okay. So the foundation of this full stack course is JavaScript. That's the foundation. But what's built on top of that foundation. For the front end, it's to begin with, yes, it's HTML and CSS. But what you also need to know is client server architecture. You know, you have to understand how client server applications or full stack, they call it full stack today. You know, when I learned this stuff, it was called client server. But how it works, the interaction between them, that's the architecture. How API calls work. Then also database stuff. This list of friends that you have here, this is going to be stored in a database. Whether it's a relational database or NoSQL or non-relational database, it's going to be stored in a database. The server is going to query the database and send this list down to the client via an API call. Ultimately, we will get, and we'll learn the two different database models. The relational model will be using MySQL. That is the most common, although increasingly things like Mongo are becoming more popular. Then React. Now, React is it really is still HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but React uses JavaScript to drive the entire experience. Whereas in this original model, JavaScript is an important part of the application, but it doesn't drive the application. What happens is that an event on the web page will use JavaScript to do something. But in the case of React, React renders the HTML, all of the HTML, not just some parts of it, but it renders all of it. It becomes very dynamic. It becomes very reactive, that's why it's called React, and it gives you a better user experience. But the fundamental underlying technology, even of React, is still HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the reason being is because that's all your browser understands. The browser understands those three core technologies. Everything else that's used is going to be built on top of one of those three core technologies. It's not something new. It's something built on top of those technologies. So you have to learn the core technologies first. And that's what we started with here with these three core technologies. And we didn't look at CSS at all. I can show you CSS real quick. We got some time. We didn't show you CSS at all. So let's just show you something real quick in CSS. Here we go, CSS. The CSS is basically this formatting of the page. I can just simply say body, background color is give it something nice like aquamarine, right? And come back here. Why didn't it do that? Didn't like that one. Why didn't it change my color? Should have changed my color. Mean? Ooh, didn't find it. Why did you find it? Let's go back to index. Did not find it. CSS. Oh, it's the wrong place. Oh, we don't have CSS file there. That's why I didn't find it. Let me move it in real quick. CSS. Oh, I didn't have it. Okay, let's try it now. Ooh, look at that. Nice color. That's what the CSS part is really, we like to call HTML the skeleton, CSS the makeup, and JavaScript the brains.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we, that's kind of like, it's a skeleton of an application is with the HTML. CSS makes it look nice, so put lipstick on it. But what's the brains of these applications? The brains of these applications is JavaScript.
And the CSS you added into the HTML, is that how it got connected?
Yeah, so in the file here, it says link, style sheet, and reference equals main.css. I've got a file called main.css, and it gives me that.
Okay. Okay.
You can do a lot with CSS, just to show you quickly. That's just a quick example. But CSS is used for, we call it styling, right? And it's really like putting the lipstick on. That's really what it's used for. But the real core brains of these applications is JavaScript. And that's what you're going to spend most of your time on.
Okay. Oh, which one is popular, JavaScript or React?
Well, okay, so React is JavaScript.
Okay.
React is built on top of JavaScript and it uses JavaScript. JavaScript is also the brains behind React.
Okay.
So someone's asking me, could I have done push friends? Well, no, you can't. You have to do them individually. You can't put all three of them at the same time. You have to do them individually. That was Anthony? Who's that? I think it was Anthony. Yeah. So the question you asked, could I put the friends 1, 2, and 3 in the push in one line? No. I don't think you can. No, I'm pretty sure you can't. You have to do them one at a time. Will we be keeping, oh yeah, so keeping homework. And what do you mean by that? Am I going to assign you homework? I'm not going to assign you homework, but I'll make getting homework. What I would say is I would give you a copy of all the notes. I can zip them up and you should practice on your own. If I was going to give you a homework assignment, yes, there's something you need to, I would say. So one of the things you want to do, you have to try and download Visual Studio. Go to the download site. Another thing you're going to want to do eventually, you don't need to do it immediately. We got a lot more to go here. So what you want to do eventually is you're going to have to download Node. You also have to download Node. And these are free. Visual Studio Code is free. Node is free. It's all open source stuff. So to download Node, you say download Node, Node.js. You can do it for Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever you're using. Not too many people use Linux, but when it works, Windows and Mac works. I've got Mac, I've got Windows, I've even got Linux. It works on all of them. Visual Studio Code works on all of them. So it doesn't matter if you're using Windows or Mac. But you're also going to want to download. Let me just put this in here as well. I can send these notes. Download Node here. And it's the link for it. So yeah, Node is not urgent, but if you want to start doing some of these samples that I did tonight, you don't absolutely have to have Visual Studio Code, but it's going to be very difficult to do it without it. So you probably want to download Visual Studio Code, and eventually Node as well. You can download it anytime you want, but eventually you'll be needing Node, and probably pretty soon, maybe in a couple of weeks. But no, I wasn't going to give you homework per se. I'll give you all the examples so you can try it out on your own.
But the classes won't be homework, is what
I'm sorry, what's that?
I think I don't know if they were saying it, but the homework will be in the classes.
I'll be demonstrating stuff, and then I will give you everything that I did so that you can experiment on your own. I can give you a homework assignments. I think what you want to do is ultimately start working on these examples that I'm giving you and think about something you would want to develop. Don't go too, don't chew off more than you bite off more than you can chew. Maybe a simple application, maybe a simple friends database, basically that just keeps some information. We could do this here where we create a form. We're going to talk about forms where you can enter information into an HTML form, and that may be that'll probably be next class. And that form can not only add it to this array, but eventually when we get to the server side of things, you'll see how that information that's typed on the form can be sent to the server and saved in a database for later retrieval. So maybe we'll work on something like that, just a little friends application, very simple. Entering some information, basic contact information, name, email address, phone maybe, and go through the whole process of submitting it to the server and getting it back. I don't want to make it too difficult, because another thing I saw with these boot camps is they were giving them projects to do that I'm like, this would probably take 3 months to do, and they want it done in a week.
Oh,
That's kind of outrageous. So I'm not going to give you anything too complicated. But I think a simple application to start with. And then, once you kind of learn the basics with the simple application, you can eventually get more complicated applications.
okay. And the server is the back end and the client is the front end.
Yes.
Is that what?
Yes. So everything we've done tonight has all been client. It's all been on the client.
Okay.
So I think most of you signed up through Meetup, but I probably have your names and email addresses. Did everyone get the registration form on Zoom?
Yeah.
So I will put a message on Meetup. If there's also my website you can go to. I don't show my web demo. My website. I got the little Star Trek Zoom team going. You can always find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't have the Meetup group here. I should add that. But LinkedIn, YouTube. So I will yeah, so all everything we did today will be zipped up and will be available on Meetup and also put on my webpage.
What is your
And this
webpage called?
video itself, so right here, webpage is appdojo.net.
Okay.
And here on YouTube, I've also got my YouTube channel. So from my webpage, you get to my YouTube channel. The videos will be uploaded to this video will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So you'll be able to
Okay.
watch it again.
And when does your class start?
6 p.m. Pacific time. So I don't know what
No,
time zone everyone's in, but
no, I mean, when are you gonna start? Is it next Thursday?
yeah,
The
next
following?
Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. Yeah, next
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, let me give you the meetup link. I do have a meetup link. In fact, I should add this meetup link. This is the meetup link. I think this is the meetup link for the course. Let me see if make sure that is correct. Okay, this is my actual group. Okay, I think this is it right here. And I need to add this to my website too, but let me just go ahead and I'll put this in the chat. Most of you, I think, found this on Meetup, and there's the Meetup link. That's actually for my entire group, which is online tech learning. So if there's not any more questions, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'll send you an email, Anthony. I've got your email address, right? So I'll put information on the Meetup. Those of you who actually want to take the full course, as far as payment goes, and on the Meetup, I'll also put it on my webpage. You can also email me directly. I'll give you my email address.
Are there any other languages you teach, or do you go beyond this, or is this the only part?
Well, as far as languages go that I know quite a few of them. Technologies, Java. I know Java very well. I know the LAMP stack,
Oh,
which is PHP. What we're looking at ultimately is the MERN stack. I know C# fairly well. Those are kind of some of the main languages. I also know Python. Those are kind of the main languages. The reason I'm doing JavaScript is because that seems to be what's up and coming. A lot of those other languages have a lot of market share, but it does seem the industry trend is going towards JavaScript becoming dominant. So, but yes, I do teach other languages. I started out with C language. I don't think too many people want to take C anymore. It's kind of
very.
an old language. It was hot 30 years ago, not now. But you know, in C++, even C++ isn't as popular as it used to be. Java pretty much took over from C++, and even Java seems to be waning now. So JavaScript seems to be what's up and coming.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just 7:30 now. So look out for the meetup group, and when the video is uploaded, I'll notify you on Meetup as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for everyone for attending.